what the fuck is breastfeeding?
Most of the issues that happen with lactation are going to happen in the first 48 hours.
Can you breastfeed if you've had a boob job?
Can you breastfeed if you've had your nipples pierced?
It's very similar to an orgasm with the same hormone, actually.
That checks off of like 5 of my questions in one go.
No one is used to having the equivalent of a Dyson on their nipples every 2 hours. Some people have a great boob job and they're making oodles of milk. It's an amazing invention. I wish they had it when I was having babies.
That's incredible. Never heard that in my life.
So in general, when you're picking formulas, baby should actually be on the areola sucking and not on the nipple. Mastitis is very common. I'm so glad you asked this because it's a great example of how we overcomplicate things.
You're gonna help so many women, honestly.
Okay, we're ready. I got a lifetime of knowledge.
Let me call Mimi.
Welcome to Actual Experts. I'm Caitlin,
I'm Lundie.
and we don't have all the answers, so we are going to ask the question.
And today we are asking, what the fuck is breastfeeding? To actual expert Brandi Jordan, a board certified lactation consultant and lactation consultant to the stars. Can we say that?
I don't know if we can, but I think we should.
I can say that. I did read online and I didn't do any research about the topic, but I did look into our actual expert. And I believe, if we're allowed to say, she was a lactation consultant for both Mandy Moore, who we love, and
Mhm.
Megan Fox.
Oh, cool. Oh my gosh. That's what when you said it, she also worked with Megan Fox on WhatsApp. I was like, because for context, we were sending back so many potential experts back and forth to each other. And I thought it was like one of like ones on like geopolitics. I was like, so interesting. Did she help Megan Fox prep for a movie? This makes
Yes.
much more sense.
Much more sense. Yes. And that was, yeah, on her Instagram, which we love. So very
That's
excited
so
to learn
cool.
from her today. Yes. Two non-lactating girlies just
To
learning about
non-lactating girlies. And we did get this recommendation from Jessica Diggs, our birth expert. So
the
thank you,
best.
Jessica. We're very excited.
Thanks,
Um,
Jessica.
but breastfeeding we know nothing about. And I texted Lundie and I said, "You're gonna die when I read these facts to you," because I literally was like screaming to Steven, like, "Can you believe it? This is what our boobs do." And he's like,
Oh my
"Uh-huh."
God. I want to learn all the things, but first I feel like it's worthwhile mentioning, shout out to Lizy, one of our best friends who's a mom. My only, understandably, our only experience with
Oh, yeah.
breastfeeding did happen at our friend's bachelorette party last year, I think, or
Yeah,
just
last year, last
over a year
October,
ago.
I think. Yeah.
And our friend Lizy, shout out Lizy, if you're listening, it was breastfeeding at the time and was pumping. And so she brought her pump out while we were all like drinking wine and like singing Taylor Swift. And I think who started it?
Our
Someone
friend.
started it and was like, "Can I try it and like feel it?" And so we all passed it around and got to feel it. And it was pretty crazy. It was not what
It's
I expected
crazy.
it to feel like.
Crazy. We will
So
share. We definitely have a hilarious video of me with the breast pump on, and we can put a little star over my nipple.
yeah, there's definitely a great photo that we need to, yeah, exactly,
It's
include here.
so
So
funny.
yeah, that's been my only experience
Yeah.
with that, but it was not what I expected. It was like an
No,
interesting feeling.
the
Yeah,
suction was interesting, but I'm
yeah,
sure it feels much different when it's an actual child, let
yes,
alone
yeah.
us like with this like
So it's to like give, yeah, exactly, sustain life instead of like us like drinking wine.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I'm
Exactly.
gonna go sterilize this now. Thanks, guys.
Okay, well, on that fun note, should I go into our fun facts because it is so crazy?
Please, I can't wait.
Okay, so first one. Breast milk isn't the same day to day or even hour to hour. Breast milk changes composition in real time based on a baby's age, time of day, and needs. Morning milk is more watery and energizing, and nighttime milk contains melatonin to help baby sleep.
Wow, that's amazing. That is so crazy.
I
Really?
know.
And
Yeah,
very interesting because I feel like babies don't sleep only at night, and so it's
it's true.
interesting that it's like night and day. Interesting.
That's
Wow.
true. I know. And
Wait.
different energy levels, which is very cool.
Mm.
Okay. Next one is your body can customize milk for a sick baby. So, when a baby is ill, their saliva sends signals during nursing that prompt the parent's body to produce more antibodies specific to that illness. It's basically a biological feedback loop.
Their saliva.
Yes,
Wow.
I know.
That
Well,
is so crazy.
I know. I remember our friend Sammy saying that when her baby cried, her boobs would start leaking. So there's
Yeah.
just like all these signals that go on. And I feel like, I mean, saliva, that's a crazy thing that it changes
I
the
think,
composition
I
of.
mean, you hear that like even just around like where if you're lactating and you have like a young baby, any baby crying doesn't even have to be your baby. Like if
Oh,
you're out
interesting.
in public and a baby cries, like it can signal that it's like time to lactate. Isn't that
Oh
interesting?
my God. Yeah. The
Yeah,
human body is wild. Science is
truly.
crazy.
Science is crazy. Wow.
Science is crazy. Okay. So then this one is actually on par with some of our questions post the GLP-1 episode about postpartum weight loss.
Mhm.
So, and we had two different people message in, one talking about how they struggled to lose weight postpartum, and another one talking about how they lost weight so quickly. And sometimes people say that there no zero science behind this, so this is just hearsay, that you lose weight because of breastfeeding because it burns so many calories. So then I looked
Yeah.
into this, and it says
Yes.
producing milk uses roughly 400 to 500 calories per day. Yet many people don't lose weight because the hormones in your body at the time are prioritizing energy storage during lactation. Because it takes so much energy to produce milk, they are storing it so that you don't lose the weight. So
Right.
that would be one of the elements of why some of our friends struggled a bit more because our body is protecting us.
Protecting, like we're so hard on ourselves and like
Hmm.
your body is biologically wired to keep weight on you because it's healthier, maybe even healthier for the baby. And we're here just like really,
Shed,
really down on ourselves.
just we're doing our best. And
Yes.
our
Uh,
bodies are doing their best. So there we go. Okay, I've got two more, which are interesting. So the first one is breast milk tastes different based on diet. So garlic, vanilla, mint, and spices subtly change the flavor of breast milk, which may help babies become more accepting of different foods later.
Okay. What is it? Garlic, vanilla.
Mint and spices. So I guess, yeah, whatever you
That's
put into that
fun.
category. Yeah. So diversify your diet while you're breastfeeding, I guess. There we go.
Okay. That's fun.
Yep.
Especially, I mean, vanilla and mint and
I know.
spices
Ice
and
cream.
garlic. Literally all my favorite flavors.
Okay, babies help regulate your hormones. So this is interesting. You know how you always see like the skin to skin when babies are
Yeah.
born?
Yeah.
So it says skin to skin and breastfeeding lower cortisol, the stress hormone, and raise oxytocin in both the parent and the baby. It's a mutual nervous system regulation. So I guess that's why they tell you to do it right after the baby comes out to help regulate. I'm making this up as well to help regulate their stress and yours.
Yeah. Well, then, so a big part of this conversation, I think,
Yeah,
will be around what mothers who don't or can't or choose not to breastfeed for
totally.
all the variety of reasons. So,
Yeah,
like, I don't know this firsthand, obviously, but you
yeah.
hear all the time the amount of guilt that
I
women
know.
feel when breastfeeding just like doesn't come naturally. There's both. There's like either that your baby like doesn't latch and like isn't into it. I was just talking about this with Luke in the other room, and he was like, I breastfed for one day and then was like, like neck,
Nothing.
like just wasn't into it. And again, everyone's different, but it's like if we're all biologically supposed to be, like why would a baby not, or like why does your body not produce milk? Like it's so many different
Totally.
cases. I'm
Totally.
curious.
I am gonna ask that because I think there's kind of that question of like what do you do when it doesn't work, but also like how do you know when to stop? Like
Like
that's like
stuff trying. Yeah.
stop trying. Like both if I think there's two levels. There's when do you know when to stop just trying if like maybe it's just really difficult for you or your baby. But then also just like do you keep going? Like Kourtney Kardashian, I feel like is gonna breastfeed until her kids are 6 years old at this rate.
Oh,
But
yes, speed. And this is a no judgment pod. So like if you are out there and you're
totally.
breastfeeding till whatever, then like live your truth. But like sometimes you'll see like a full toddler, like a
Yes.
full grown child. And
That
my
can
mom
speak.
used to always joke that I breastfed probably until I was like had teeth. Like is like
Yeah.
too old, whatever that may mean. And she always said if you can ask for it, you're too old. And
Well,
that was
there you go.
me, definitely, and I had a pacifier till I was, like, 6, so, like
I I did too. My mom made me my aunt was a volunteer at the hospital, and now on reflection, this was a lie. They lied to me, but they made me go and they said there's babies at the hospital that need your pacifiers. So I think it's time you hand them over. So then I went to the hospital and my aunt was there and I handed over my bowl of pacifiers for the babies who needed it. And then my aunt gave me like a Barbie doll. And she said, "This is a
Yeah.
thank you from the hospital for giving us your pacifiers." Now, on reflection, that is completely false. There's no
Yeah.
chance they gave used pacifiers to
No.
these
No.
babies.
But you know
But
what?
it was
That is so Verity coded, your mom Verity. Like she would instill like the act of giving and like generosity and
good.
selflessness into
Yes,
Caitlin at age 1.5. Like
exactly.
Caitlin,
I'm like
some people
waddling
don't
down
need
the street.
anything. Exactly. Okay, well, I used to be such a fiend for my pacifier that my dad tells a story that I like when they were trying to wean me off of it. I would go to bed and they would say like, "Okay, no pacifier at night," and I would take it and I would go under my pillow and grab one out of the stash. Like I would stash them around the house. They'd take them away and then I'd walk back in the room and have one in my mouth. My dad would be like, "Where are you getting these?" I was clearly I was old enough to be strategic about it, which means I was too old to have a pacifier. But yeah, so anyway,
I didn't
and
put
then
this
I
in my question guide, but we need to remember, can you breastfeed if you've had a boob job?
I know. Yeah, please. That's actually one of my questions. Not
You should ask.
personally, but I will ask myself. Okay, with
That's a good
a
one because we
boob.
also got asked, please ask if you can breastfeed if your nipple's pierced. So I'm gonna
Oh yeah.
oh, and then you have like extra flow, like 3 holes.
Okay, here's a myth I would like to bust. Do you watch Below Deck? Below
I
Deck.
have.
For anyone listening who watches Below Deck, Aisha, who's a chief stew on one of the seasons, she's amazing. She's like very candid and like quite crude and funny. She said that she breastfed I don't know if that's appropriate to say, but like from a friend, like she like drank
Oh,
from a
like a
friend's
milkmaid. Oh,
boob.
not a milkmaid. She drank someone else's boob.
No,
Okay.
someone else's.
Yes.
A friend of hers who was breastfeeding, and she said that I'm gonna have to find the clip. We're gonna have to put it in. She said that it doesn't come out as you would expect through like one hole. It comes out through the whole nipple.
Okay, I'm gonna write this down. How does it release? Okay, well, then this is my last story before I go into the
Oh
bio of
yeah, please,
Brandi.
and then we can
Is
introduce our actual expert.
actual
Yeah, exactly.
not
Yeah.
us just like saying random things we've seen on the internet. My mom, I don't know how many months pregnant she was because this is one of my question is when does milk start forming?
Oh,
Because it's
good
before you
question.
give birth because you
Good
have to be
question.
ready, right?
Good
Um,
question.
but my mom said, like, I think in the weeks leading up to before I was born, my dad heard my mom go like, "Oh my gosh, Jeff, come here." And he kind of freaked out. She was in the shower, and I guess the like warmth of the water made her nipples relax, and she was like shooting milk out of her boobs in the shower. And it was just like projectile milk all over the
I
shower
mean,
wall.
it's bound to happen. And
And
then how long maybe after your baby stops nursing does it dry up? Because I think you just keep producing it as long as
yes.
something's
Well,
nursing, I think.
that's actually good. I asked, how does milk get made and what controls the supply versus the demand?
Yeah. And like, why can you not sometimes make enough milk?
Yeah.
So
Okay. Should we
let's
hear
bring our
about Brandy?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, Brandi Jordan has been helping new families grow, adjust, and find balance for almost 2 decades. She's a board certified lactation consultant, a pediatric sleep specialist. It's also interesting. That's a whole other episode.
That's a whole
Newborn
other.
care specialist, and a postpartum doula. 2009, she opened the Cradle Company, a pregnancy and postpartum resource center. And in 2018, Brandi founded the National Association of Birth Workers of Color.
Love.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Love.
I'm excited to speak to her. She's done a lot of really cool
Amazing.
things.
And if she's a recommendation of Jessica Diggs, our actual expert about birth, then we know she's going to be good because Jessica's
Amazing.
amazing.
Totally.
Amazing. Let's bring her on.
Please note that this pod is for educational purposes only. Nothing we say should be taken as financial, legal, or medical advice. Please do your own research, and when in doubt, ask an actual expert.
I do like always be recording because some of the good stuff is always at the beginning.
Always,
Yeah.
always.
Nice. How's your day going?
It's going really good. The sun's
Yeah.
out, so can't complain.
There
This
you
is
go.
very true. This is
Yeah,
very true.
We're in LA, right? You're based in LA?
Well, I split halftime in LA and France, but I actually happen to be in
Nice.
Florida for work right now, so I'm in Florida.
Oh, okay, nice. Nice.
Okay,
That's very cool. Well, then
dreamy.
we have lots of locations. I'm in Montreal and Lundie's in South Africa. And
Hey,
then,
my son's in Montreal for college.
at McGill.
He's at Concordia.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, I just moved here for my new job. So,
He got there in January. He's newbie too. So
okay,
it's a
amazing.
great city.
It's
I went at the
fun.
wrong time. My first visit to Montreal should not have been in January.
I know. I know. I
You
know.
So
should
I'm hoping to
it's
redeem
like
that when we pick him up in May, that it'll be okay. But it
Yes.
was, even besides the being like 10 below zero, it was an amazing, cute city. I loved it.
It's really cute. We're excited. I moved with my husband. We moved from South Africa.
Congratulations.
I was there.
Yeah.
Lundie and I, that's how we know each other. We were living in South
I
Africa.
saw that. I saw
Yeah.
your, I guess you would call like your trailer video, which is
Yes,
super
yeah, yeah.
cute.
Yeah.
So I'll have to
Perfect.
come to you guys. South Africa's on my bucket list. So I have to get all the info from you guys at some point.
put it on the top of the list. We tell everyone, come. We will
Oh, I'm
happily.
dying.
So
But
sorry.
on that very happy note, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to have you on. We've really learned a lot in the last few months, speaking to a very wide spectrum of different experts in different fields. So we're very excited. And we messaged Jessica because we were asking, like, who do we speak to about this? And she was like, you have to speak to Brandi. So
Yeah.
it's perfect.
Oh, love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love her.
So, just to give you a little bit of context on this, so the way we run every single episode is that one of us is the person who does the research, creates the questions, and in this case, that's me. And
Okay.
then there's always someone who comes in what we say blind. So the idea is they're the voice of the listener. So this is
Okay, that's
I
smart.
know nada. I mean, we're both not
Love
mothers,
it.
so we really both don't know much about breastfeeding lactation generally, but I really haven't looked into it at all. So I will be asking all the
Awesome.
who's and what's
I
questions.
love
Yeah.
talking to newbies about it. I love talking to people before they have kids because
Yes.
so much could be mitigated if it wasn't like this like unknown thing that people are just like, I think it just happens. And yeah, maybe 150 years ago that probably was the case when we were more attuned to it. But there is a learning
Okay.
curve. So I'm just glad that you guys are having this conversation before you have kids or think about having kids. You're going to be ahead of the
That's why
curve.
we're here. You're going to help so many women, honestly.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to dive in.
Love it.
So, our first one, obviously, the topic is what the fuck is breastfeeding? But we wanted to know, what is a lactation consultant?
A lactation consultant. So I'm going to give you a small answer to a big question because a lot of people will call themselves a lactation consultant, but not necessarily. So traditionally speaking, a lactation consultant, also known as an IBCLC, which means International Board Certified Lactation Consultant, IBCLC, is someone who is basically licensed. Like we go through a licensing exam. Most people have done like thousands of hours of, internship and academic work to be able to get that designation. Let's say 20 years ago, only nurses could become lactation consultants. And then maybe about 15 years ago, when people started coming back to like, I would like to breastfeed, and we had, since the 70s, not having it been a big thing, we didn't have enough people in the field to like give that expertise. And so they started letting people non-nursing IBCLCs began. And so people could go and do didactic training, like go to university, for example. Like I did my lactation training at University of California, San Diego. They had a program. And people go into it from different ways. Like I had a social work background, doula background. And so I kind of already had the hands-on. And so I had to probably do less hours than most people. But generally people are doing somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 hours, getting educated, learning clinical lactation, meaning not just like how you get the baby on, how you get the milk to come out, but like if someone has a mastectomy, if they've had breast reduction, if they are trans, like they can deal with more clinical type issues. Then we have breastfeeding counselors, which come with many different acronyms depending on where they were trained. And they are people who are trained in lactation, but they are not a clinical lactation specialist, meaning like they wouldn't be able to bill to insurance and they wouldn't deal with like high level breastfeeding issues. Like maybe someone's diabetic and having issues with like building actual milk. And so that's kind of the designation, if that makes sense, just to kind of break it down a little bit. So you have lactation counselors and you have lactation consultants who are licensed, who can bill insurance and who deal with more higher clinical issues. But because there's a lack of lactation consultants across the globe, you see a lot of mixture of the two people doing similar things.
Okay, very interesting. So, when would you call a lactation consultant versus a lactation counselor?
Well, then when you're pregnant, I'm so glad you asked this question. So most people think that lactation is just someone you call if you're having a breastfeeding issue.
Okay.
And one of the cool things, so I did my lactation training at Kaiser Hospital in Los Angeles, and they are one of the few hospitals who have like prenatal lactation. Basically, we would try to meet with moms by 37 weeks. There's research that has been shown that by 32 to 34 weeks, most women, moms have decided how they're going to feed their baby. So getting that information, like myth busting, et cetera, to happen after they had the baby is actually too late. And so a lot of things that people think about breastfeeding, what you can do, how it works, a lot of it is kind of made up mythical things that maybe someone like told your mom in 1970. And so I always recommend that when you're pregnant at some point in your, let's say, second or third trimester, if your hospital or your doctor has a connection to lactation, see them for a prenatal lactation session, or you can actually just call a lactation consultant and set up that one-to-one session. It's the best time because it can prepare you for a lot of the expectations. So you know that you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
So much of what I deal with as a consultant is I meet with people who just like I'm doing terrible, I suck at this. And it's really because they have no barometer. They don't know how to like test this up against anything. And I'm like, you're doing great. You're making loads of milk, but they don't know because they don't
Yeah.
have that, like, this is what's normal. So if you get that education in your pregnancy, you're going to go into your delivery with information that's going to help you to have a smoother transition. Most of the issues that happen with lactation are going to happen in the first 48 hours. Like I always say, if I could see someone on day one or when they were pregnant to like give them like, A through F information, 70% of the issues that I see in someone's home probably wouldn't exist because they would be educated on a lot of the things that either makes breastfeeding harder or prevents them from making milk, that kind of thing. So in answer to
Wow.
your question, you want to do that when you're pregnant if possible. And if not, be the squeaky wheel at the hospital. The moment that baby is in your arms, it is partner's job to tell them, hey, we want to see lactation. Most hospitals in the US do have lactation on site. Depending on where you live, like what country you're in, that might change depending on the country. But in the US, most European countries have lactation specialists and all their nurses are trained. But you want to get that, see them within a few hours after having your baby if you didn't do that when you're pregnant.
Okay, that is so interesting, and that's so funny. Checks off of like 5 of my questions in one go, which is absolutely
Great.
perfect, which is so good. So, just so I understand, when you speak to a lactation consultant, it sounds like they set you up for success when it comes to
Mhm.
breastfeeding. Manage your expectations of what's going to happen, what might not happen, and how to prep for it. Is that correct?
Yes, but also they can basically do an assessment because maybe you do have some kind of high risk thing going on that
Oh,
might make it harder for you. So, for example, if I meet someone pregnant, they told me they had a breast reduction. I know that might present some issues depending on when they had it done. So, for anyone thinking about a breast reduction before having kids or an augmentation, what usually happens is they cut the milk ducts when they reposition the nipple. And so that's where the milk goes through. It has to go through those ducts to come out of your nipple. And so if those have been cut, it may be fine that you have 50% of them, and that's enough to be able to breastfeed your baby. But if a lot of the breast tissue, which is what holds all the milk, has been removed or taken out, it could present issues. We want to know that, in
Right.
pregnancy or early on so that you're not like, I don't know why this isn't working. I don't know why this isn't working. And no one's ever told this person that maybe that could have been an issue. So we can assess for issues. Like we have people who have like inverted nipples that they can start actually getting to evert when they are pregnant or at the beginning of the pregnancy if we know that's happening. And so a lot of it's assessment for your specific situation that we can kind of like say, okay, for your specific situation, this is what you need. This is what I'm saying. Or like everything looks great. You're going to do
right.
great. Like this is what you should be looking for. So it can be a little bit of a cheerleading section, but also can kind of troubleshoot issues that might come up later.
That was one of our questions: is can you breastfeed if you've had a boob job? And the answer
You
sounds like
can.
yes, but you just need
Some
to.
people have great boob jobs. I didn't even know they had a boob job unless they told me,
Right.
so, and they're making oodles of milk. I think it also depends on when you got the boob job. And
Okay.
so like this is my 26th year, I think, as a
Wow.
doula, and
Wow.
lactation I've been doing for about 15 years. So I've seen all the boobs.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
20 years ago, what used to happen is they literally would just like, they would cut everything, cut through the muscle, whatever. But I would say in the past 10 years, they've been smart about how they do them. They, I think, go through the armpit sometimes now, and that way they're able to
Mhm.
preserve a lot of that breast tissue
Okay.
and the milk duct. So it's changed. So if you're thinking about getting augmentation before having a baby, it's questions you want to ask. Like, I plan on having kids later. I'm going to breastfeed. Is there a way to do this in a way that like can preserve that for me? Because it is possible.
Okay. So good to know. So we're going into milk ducts. So I want to know and ask, what is actually happening physiologically when you breastfeed? Like, how is milk produced within your body?
So I always like to first say that milk production is supply and demand.
Okay.
So what happens after you have your baby, you have this rush of hormones that you didn't produce when you were pregnant because it would have had you go into premature labor. So you have these hormones. And so partially part of milk production is hormones. And the other part is physical, meaning you need stimulation. That stimulation most likely will be coming from your baby. It also can come from a breast pump. So that stimulation tells your body like, oh, I need to make some milk. And that stimulation elicits one of the hormones, oxytocin, which
Mhm.
creates this milk eject reflex, meaning my body gets stimulation and then this hormone built, and then I have this release of milk. It's very similar to an orgasm. And so it's the same kind of
All
system, the
right.
same hormone actually, but it's all supply and demand. So people don't realize it's that, yes, if your baby's going to the boob every hour, people are thinking like, I'm not making enough. That's why this baby's doing this. And really, your body needs all that stimulation in the beginning to be able to produce milk. And so that's what's happening. So in the beginning, we do what we call feeding on demand, meaning letting that baby go to the breast as much as they need to, because a lot of it is specifically for the things that need to happen physiologically for you to be able to make that milk. Your body doesn't know if you had one baby or three babies. And so having that like baby put the order in, it's like, okay, your body needs 28 ounces. Okay, I'm on it. I'm going to start making milk. And what happens is for some people who don't have this information, they might be like, oh, I breastfed, yesterday and I did one today and I don't understand
Yeah.
why it's not working. And so it
Uh-huh.
has to be this, melodic where it's usually every 2 to 3 hours that you're feeding a newborn. Now, there are
Wow.
situations when a baby can't get to the breast, like maybe they have a cleft palate or they were born premature, and then we're going to simulate that same thing with the breast pump. But the goal would be that your baby is the one doing it because it's different to let down to a machine than it is to a baby. It's easier to
Mhm.
do that with your actual human baby that feels warm and cozy versus doing the breast pump. So in the beginning, like that's how your body makes milk.
Question on that. So that's kind of like it sounds like when the trigger happens for you to start releasing milk, but this is me just totally guessing. You create milk before the baby's born because you need it ready when the baby is born. So when does that milk
Yes.
creation start happening?
So, depending on the mom, some
Yeah.
people will even start leaking milk in that last trimester, but generally by the second or third trimester, your body's already producing what we call colostrum, which is the first milk. You might hear it called golden milk. It has a golden yellow color to it because it's high in beta carotene. It has more calories, more protein because babies aren't taking that much in the beginning. So it's kind of like having like a high pirate smoothie in the beginning versus like sitting down and having a full meal. And so a lot of people think, oh, it's only a teaspoon, it's not enough. But these are, so I'm going to talk about something for seconds to make this make sense to you. So a lot of the times what most people are concerned about is that their baby's not getting enough milk. In the beginning, when your baby's born, their tummy is filled with a substance called meconium, which is basically all the poop that they didn't poop when they were in your tummy. And so that is all in there. So they don't have a lot of space for actual food, in this instance. By the baby sucking, it creates peristalsis of the gut, which allows them to pass the meconium. Simultaneously, that sucking gets you to make milk. So by say day 2 or 3, they've gotten rid of that meconium and your milk has increased. And now you guys are both ready to like party and drink a lot more milk. And so those first couple of days, the most confusion people have is because they feel like I'm only making a tablespoon or a teaspoon, and baby
Right.
has a tummy the size of a marble. That's all they can take. And if you know
Yeah.
that, you're less concerned and you're not worried that they're coming to the breast often because they're starving. It is something that is like we can't explain why it happens in this way. It's one of those miracles of like human nature that
Right.
it's a perfect system where you're helping them release that meconium from their tummy by all the sucking, and they're helping you to produce milk.
Wow.
That's incredible. First of all, never heard that in my life. No one knows that. Who knows that? So, like, this should be common knowledge. Can I ask about colostrum? How much do you produce and for how long? Like, people say, like, you have to capture the colostrum, like, if the
Freeze
baby's
it.
not there, you need to jar it or something. Like, is it just a tablespoon once, or is it like for the first week?
So you're going to have it the first couple of days. And then over time, what people will see is a color change. And that just means the more mature milk is coming. Like you've done your job by getting that baby to the breast or using your pump, et cetera. And so what ends up happening is over time, it starts to change in composition. As you're eating, baby sucking, it just changes. And so there is a time limit. It's usually the first 3 to 4 days is going to be colostrum. And so that's why it's so important. The other thing that colostrum does is that it seals the gut. And it's so important because what they found is that it can prevent a lot of like stomach things that people can have long term, like allergies and other things like IBS, et cetera, if they get that sealing. So just kind of think about this being the gut. It has these holes in it. What colostrum does is come and closes those holes and creates that like sealed gut so that you don't end up with like leaky gut when you're 40 years old, which we do know can be attributed to not having that first milk.
Like the first 3 days of your life are
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, consequential. That's so
Yeah. And even the first day, like I tell people, because people will come to me like, I only got to breastfeed for 3 weeks or a month. I'm so terrible. I'm like, if you did it for even one day, do you know how amazing it is what you've done for your child just to do this for one day? I think oftentimes parents undervalue what goes into feeding their child. Whether you do it for one day or 4 months or 6 months, you've done an amazing service for your child. And so I always like to reiterate that. I know a lot of moms that are like working 2 jobs, like they just don't see it as being something they can sustain. But just knowing that, like, if you're in the hospital for 2 days, you do it for 2 days, you've done this great service to your child by giving them that initial sealing of the gut and like just the attachment that comes with that and like all of the immuno things that happen with that first milk because they don't have an immune system in the beginning. So you kind of inoculate them with your breast milk and that colostrum as well.
Is there a way to work around that? So, because not everyone can breastfeed.
Mhm.
And so, what is the substitute for people who can't provide that colostrum?
Yeah, so if you're talking about like your own personal body, you could hand express and get some of that milk out and collect it and just use your finger and put it in their mouth. There is no way to recreate colostrum if you aren't producing it from your body. Now,
Yeah.
you definitely could have donor milk, which is still going to be good for your baby if you want to do that in the first couple of days instead of having formula, because it will be easier for your baby to digest human milk versus an alternative milk source. But if it's possible, and maybe you just don't want to breastfeed, and that's fine too, you definitely could hand express or use a pump and get that initial colostrum out. It comes out so tiny, so people feel like, what's the point of this? I got like 2 drops, but it actually really is good for them. And it's something that I would give to them even if I had 1 drop.
And
wow.
then the alternative is formula. And is
Yeah,
there like a
formula.
specific newborn formula that like for those first few days that you would recommend?
So in general, when you're picking formulas, and so here's another thing that people don't realize, even though my work as a lactation consultant, I do a lot of consultation with people on formula because not everybody can breastfeed. And so that'd be another reason why you would meet with someone in lactation to kind of tell you what your alternatives are if you aren't going to breastfeed or you don't want to breastfeed.
Mm.
So right now, what I would say is that the safest, most highest rated formula all comes from Europe. And that's for a couple of reasons. So one of those reasons is that our Food and Drug Administration does not eliminate a lot of the things that in Europe would be considered, banned or unsafe. So let's say in the past 20 years, where our Food and Drug Administration might have banned 20 things, and that same period of time, Europe probably did like 1,400.
Wow.
So
Oh, wow.
that in itself will make the things that you buy safer, whether it's, crackers at the grocery store or formula. Now, with
Sure.
that being said, the downside to that is like you have to be organized, you have to get it shipped. Like you're not going to be able to go run to Walmart or to,
Yeah.
Whole Foods and get it necessarily. And so
Yeah.
what I usually recommend is a European brand called Holly, and that's HOLLE. There's another brand called HIPP. I'm not sure where they're from, but they're also European. And they have really, really great formula. One of the things that I noticed when using Holly is that usually when you have a breastfed baby, their poop has a very like golden look to it. It looks like almost like mustard with seeds in it, and that's curdled milk. And so for the first time when I had a client that used Holly,
Yeah.
the poop also came out that golden color. And I'd never seen that with any other formula. I was like, what? This looks like breast milk poop. And I think, a lot of the components in it, like they can't make it, like breast milk, but they can do things that are just as healthy, and they can also ensure that it has a low sugar. And so a lot of the formulas that I see that are in the US, some of their first 2 ingredients are going to be, corn syrup or sugars, which we also don't want our babies to have a lot of.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so, I would definitely go with European. I know there are some American-based brands that are touting themselves like European. One of those would be called Bobby.
Okay.
But generally, I'm recommending Holly to my clients.
Okay. Very helpful. So, so I want to go back to kind of the first 72 hours. What do most people expect breastfeeding to be like? And then it's not in something that surprises them. And what are you telling new moms in that first initial few days?
So I think that people are are on two ends of the spectrum. They're
Yeah.
either expecting for it to be like there's sunshine coming into the room and I'm holding my baby and we're breastfeeding.
Yeah.
So either that or it's gonna be the most terrible. I'm gonna have bleeding nipples and like I'm never gonna sleep again and it's gonna suck. Like that's usually, and it's probably
Right.
somewhere in the middle in those first 72 hours. It definitely can be that like your baby comes out of your belly and is straight to the breast. And that's what we want to see happen. And so one of the things that you want to be looking at when you're pregnant and like you're like, I'm not sure where I want to deliver, you want to make sure the hospital that you're delivering at or whoever your care providers are, they understand and like really value what we call the golden hour. That is the hour after you deliver your baby. Most hospitals nowadays have some sort of protocol about you being able to just like be with your baby being cozy, snuggling right after, as opposed to them doing 1,000 tests and doing things that aren't necessary right away. Because we understand how important it is in that first hour, if you're wanting to breastfeed, to get baby to the breast and kind of have that like attachment thing happening. So usually, what's happening is that you're going to have this baby, they're going to put baby to mom's chest, and at some point the baby themselves might actually like work their way and try to initiate nursing, and or you might get someone to support you in doing that. We like to see that happen the first couple of hours after having a baby. There are many people who experience like, oh, no one told me anything, I didn't breastfeed until like 10 hours after. And so there's this range because there isn't like this, universal thing that every hospital, every care provider is doing. And so just for people who are listening who don't know, your goal would be in the first couple hours to do it. Now, depending on how you birthed, meaning like, was there a lot of medication involved? Was it a very long labor? You might have a less alert baby. So let's just say you had an induction and like you were getting stimulants to help you with the pain. Like baby's getting that on some level too. So they might come out a little sleepy, loopy, and may not be that interested in those first couple of hours. And so that's something to
Okay.
kind of think about why we have such a varying, like what it looks like. So if it doesn't happen that first 3 hours, again, don't be like, I failed, it's not working. You got to
Yeah.
kind of think about like, what did my birth look like? Because it can really determine what that first, 2 to 10 hours looks like. But all things working well, the first 2 to 3 hours, we'd like to see baby getting to the chest. Other thing that people don't realize is how often babies need to eat. And so
Yeah,
they're eating
2
every 2 to 3 hours at, a minimum, but it could be every hour. And so the other thing is that you're counting from the beginning of a feed to the beginning of the next. So let's say you fed Susie at 10 a.m. and her feeding was an hour long and she eats every 2 hours. That means you only have a 1 hour break between 11 and 12. And I don't think people really think about it in that way because in the beginning, breastfeeding takes time. The baby's sleepy, like they need to be burped so much, like they just can't stay awake. And your job is kind of keep them stimulated to get them, creating that stimulation that's necessary for them to actually, one, get that gut moving and getting the meconium out, but also to help you to increase your milk production. And so
Okay,
I think a lot of people are very shocked by that.
how do you know? So your baby's feeding and then they're sleepy and they're disinterested. How do you know that they should keep feeding? How do you know how long they're supposed to feed for?
So that's such a hard part about breastfeeding is that it can't be quantified, which is like, I wish that our breasts had like, the ounces on here so people
Yeah.
could see
Right.
what they were getting. Because I think that's what gets people so like, I'm not sure if it's enough. The bottle I can see. And so it
Mhm.
has to be very subjective. Like, baby was crying and super upset. And now they got on there and they like seem really calm and happy. What we really want to be seeing is milk transfer. What I see a lot in my practice is that I will get to someone, it's like, I'm feeding every 2 hours. I don't know what's happening. My baby's losing weight. Why isn't this working? Like we're feeding all the time. I watch the feeding and I see, yes, baby was at the breast, but they weren't actually transferring any milk from mom's breast. They're kind of doing like a little. And so if they're
Uh-huh.
not actively sucking and you're not seeing signs of actual swallowing, like the ear moving, a little gulps happening, milk coming around the mouth, and they may actually just be hanging out there and not actually getting the milk that they need. And so one of the things that you want to be learning in the hospital initially is what are those signs in your baby of milk transfer? So like I said, having like seeing that ear move up and down, like seeing like this little chin drop when they're swallowing, they will do that. This little like sound of them
Yeah.
swallowing and taking the milk in. And then also looking at them like they were super agitated and they did this for like 4 or 5 minutes and now they're conked out. Those are good signs that baby's feeding. But on a minimum, I try to give people this idea of like, think about getting 10 minutes of actual milk transfer. So that way you're not counting the burping time and the diaper changing time. If we have at least getting that for a newborn, you're probably doing okay. Now
And
they will
minutes at a
probably
time.
find it's going to be longer than that, but And that's like the actual milk transfer. So they may have been sitting there for 40 minutes and only got 15 minutes of milk transfer. If
Okay.
you're really looking at them actually taking the milk in. And so that's one way to gauge it. The other
Okay.
way is looking at other things like wet diapers. So an easy way to think about this is between day 1 and 6, we want them to have the same number of wet diapers as how old they are. On day 1, I want at least 1 wet diaper. On day 2, 2 wet diapers. Day 3, at least 3 wet diapers. They're probably going to have 10 if this baby's eating well. But like, if I'm not seeing that as a minimum, and then by day 6, it's 6 or more every day after that. That's a really good
Okay.
sign that breastfeeding is going well. Another sign is like seeing that change in the poop. Meconium poop is black. It looks like tar almost. And over time, it gets lighter as this baby's taking in more milk. And so it might go to like a dark green, then a dark brown. And then now it's having that golden look. That's a good sign that milk transfer is happening. And so you have to kind of look at different things to be able to do this. But this is again the beauty of having someone who knows, like a lactation consultant, to be able to consult with you at the hospital or at home to kind of give you
Right.
like, yes, this is going great. And nowadays you can do it virtually. There's so many ways to see lactation if like you're in a rural place and you don't have someone that you can, reach out to. There's so many ways and platforms to do that now. Does that answer your question?
Right. You did. And I have one follow-up question.
I
Minds
know,
are
we're
blown.
both like, "What?"
This is incredible. So just a follow-up question to that. If you are listening to this podcast, you know all the signs. Once you have your baby, you know what to look for, and you're not seeing that, or they're not latching, or they're not feeding for a full 10 minutes, or their poop is not changing color as expected over the course of those days. Do you just consult an actual expert at that point? Is there anything you can do to like
Yes.
troubleshoot, or you go straight to an actual expert?
So I recommend that people don't troubleshoot on their own, especially if you've done it before. Like, how do you know what you're troubleshooting? Like, you could be troubleshooting and there's like a serious issue going on that like your baby needs immediate
Sure.
attention. And with a newborn, like we don't have a lot of margin for error and that, and they're so tiny. And
Sure.
so if you are unsure and it could just be nothing, be unsure and call an expert, call your pediatrician, call a lactation consultant, make sure that we are confident that your baby is getting enough and not getting dehydrated. And so, it's not breastfeeding at all costs. Like I love breastfeeding. I think it's amazing. I breastfeed my own kids, but also the baby's got to eat at the end of the day. So whatever needs to happen for this baby to eat, want to make sure that's happening. And so I would say don't wing it. And I trust mom's intuition. So if they're feeling like something's off, reach out to someone. Don't wait. Don't troubleshoot yourself. Because what happens a lot of times that I find that moms end up enduring so much unnecessary pain and frustration, whereas like someone who's done it 1,000 times can clear it up for them in like 5 minutes, and then they're
Right.
good to go.
Yeah.
The other thing is when you're talking about like breastfeeding, like here's some other signs you want to be looking at where you may just be powering through, and I'd want you to see someone. If you have bleeding or cracked nipples, a lot of times people are just like, oh, it's just part of it. I'm just going to be in pain and that's fine. Do not accept pain as part of breastfeeding. If you are in pain, see a lactation consultant, because generally there's probably things that are going on with the latch, or there could be an anatomy issue that we can troubleshoot and assess and make it better for you. Doesn't mean that initially breastfeeding, it doesn't feel good. So I hate that fallacy that it's like, oh, it's just like nothing.
I wanna
No one's
ask,
used to having
that
it.
was my question. I wanna know, like, what does it feel like?
No one is used to having the equivalent of a Dyson on their nipples every 2 hours. Like it's just not, we're not used to it. And so there is a toughening up period where you are sore. So for example, people who have red hair tend to be more sensitive to breastfeeding. There's something about red hair and very fair skinned people who tend to have more sensitive nipples. I don't want to say like what that pain level should be because everyone has a different pain tolerance. But if you're feeling like where you're dreading every 2 hours, like, oh, we got to do it again, you're bracing yourself, you probably want to see someone because there's like small little things that we can do. And you're like, oh my God, this is life changing. This feels so much better now. So bleeding, cracked nipples, a lot of soreness. If you see that baby's getting like sucking blisters, if a lot of times mom's soreness may not be about her at all. It could be the baby. The baby could have a tongue tie or something else going on. And if we don't assess it for you, you could just be in pain for the next 6 months and not know why.
What's a tongue tie?
A tongue tie, there's a little piece of skin underneath your tongue. You have an upper one and a bottom one, which is called your frenulum. And sometimes that little piece of skin, that flap can be really tight, and it keeps the baby from being able to extend their tongue past the gum line. And so when they have a tongue tie, they can't get that tongue up high enough. Likewise, you could have a lip tie. Like I have a gap, so I had a lip tie. And so someone could have that, and that could cause them not to be able to get a tight enough suction on the breast, which then also can lead to them slipping down and just sucking on the nipple. Baby should
Okay.
actually be on the areola sucking and not on the nipple. And if they have anything going on in their mouth anatomically, it can start to create a situation where they're sliding down and again giving mom sore nipples.
So useful. Like I'm
Good.
overwhelmed by the amount of useful knowledge right now.
But it's so much is why I say that you need to
Totally.
speak to someone. Like you
Totally.
could go read a book and it's not going to be able to tell you like, oh, it's normal that one of your boobs is double the size of the other one. Like there's
Yeah.
not going to be a chapter about that. Like
Yeah.
it
that
will go
normal?
back to normal. Like that kind of, it's normal. Like I always say there's a stud and a dud. There's always one good boob and one bad boob. And so you might have
That's
one boob that produces double the amount of milk than the other one. It's
okay.
normal. It happens. And so things like that, like if you're in this like vacuum by yourself, you don't know all the things that are like normal or abnormal. And that's why
Right.
having someone who can kind of give you that information is just so important. And I just want
And just
every
like
person
put
to have
you at
access to
ease.
that.
There's so much like
Yeah.
stress,
Yeah.
anxiety. I can only imagine for first time moms generally, and the pressure that we put on ourselves to do it right and get it right the first time. And so just
Totally.
like knowing all this is so helpful. Really.
Yeah, and there's such a stigma around it now. Like, you know, for a time, breastfeeding wasn't cool. Like, I was born in the 70s, and my mom said, like, then it was like she breastfed us, but it was like you had to hide, like, it was like super, like, not cool. Like, you
Oh
were a
my
hippie
gosh.
or you were like poor or whatever. Like, she remember telling her pediatrician I was going to breastfeed, and he actually said this to my mom: "You're not poor. Why would you do that?" Uh, Like, so
Wow.
you're like,
Hey,
okay. And now we're seeing the exact opposite happen, that it's actually more affluent people that are breastfeeding because we've made it more commercial. Like you got to have this fancy, you know, bra or this certain kind of breast pump. And like, we need to get back to this, like everyone can do it. You don't need to
Like,
have fancy equipment to be able to do it. You just need information and access to the education necessary.
knowledge is
exactly. We're here.
power. That's why we're
Yeah.
We're here
here.
for it.
Totally.
One of the questions that someone asked in advance, and I want to ask this before we get into what you just touched on, which is like the emotional side of breastfeeding. But there's
Mhm.
one last question around some of the physical side is one of my friends suffered from mastitis. Is that right?
Mastitis. Yeah.
Mastitis. And so
Mhm.
she wanted to know a bit more around like what are the physical complications, including mastitis, and what is actually happening there and what to look out for.
Yeah, so mastitis is very common. It's basically a breast infection. And so if I'm with a mom and she's telling me like, "Oh, I feel like I'm getting the flu," I automatically know she has mastitis. Call your pediatrician, call your OB, whoever you need to call, and you're going to get some antibiotics is what's going to happen. And there's a couple of reasons that mastitis can happen, but basically it's a breast infection. And so obviously, for example, let's say you got some cuts or some abrasions that keeps it open and easy for bacteria to get in there and for an infection to start. Another thing that can happen is let's say you're not feeding enough or baby's not transferring enough when they're at the breast, it can get backed up and those milk ducts can get plugged. And what can happen is if it's not able to kind of like push through, we can then get an infection in that duct that which then spreads and you end up getting mastitis. It's usually on one breast or the other, not both usually. If you're having that issue, but literally you take antibiotics and in 12 hours you'll feel better. So it's something that's very treatable. Now let's just say you're someone who's like, I don't want to take antibiotics, I don't want to take anything. There are ways to naturally cure it. So just obviously a lot of bed rest, doing the same things like having like cranberry juice or cranberry tablets, the same thing you would do for like a UTI to kind
Yeah.
of cleanse out, you could do for mastitis. For the
Okay.
most part, though, my OB or midwife or lactation and kind
Yeah.
of troubleshooting about what to do. Because what could happen is, let's say when those plug ducts doesn't get resolved, it can turn into an abscess, which then can get more inflamed and more serious. And then there are situations where people actually have to have surgery to get that abscess removed.
Oh
If
no.
you're kind of not like nipping it in the bud. And so it can be solved with antibiotics. And it's usually you will feel better in a half a day, 24 hours. So it's not something that people will have long term, but you will feel like you've
would
been
think
hit by
they
a
have
truck.
flu? Yeah, like who would think like, oh, I feel like I have the flu. It must be
Yeah,
a
everyone
breast
would say that. Like, it feels like that. Like, you feel
Wow.
instantly exhausted, like you were just knocked out. You might have a fever, you might have those like achy muscle kind of feelings you get with the flu. Telltale signs of mastitis. If a new mom within that first month tells me she has any of those symptoms, I never even think flu. I automatically think mastitis.
So interesting. It's so funny because one of my questions was, how do you know when to ask for help? And it sounds like just call whenever
lot.
you're a little uncertain. Literally just pick up the
Yeah, there's just so many avenues now. Like, it's not like before where you just have to like get into your doctor and make this appointment and drive downtown. Like, there's so many ways to do that. Most of my clients are using like telehealth now, you know, they can
Mhm.
troubleshoot with you. And so
Totally.
I
Mhm.
would say just, you know, use those things. So like, you know, if you can invest in anything is have some kind of telehealth type thing that you can be signed on to. I think even Amazon has one now,
Wow.
where it's like, $100 a year and you can like triage with, a physician's assistant or a nurse, et cetera.
Okay.
But that's really helpful in the fourth trimester, like after having your baby, those first 3 or 4 months can be really helpful. But if you're
Yeah.
unsure, just ask someone. Don't
Totally.
like be in Reddit and on Facebook crowdsourcing this because you're talking to a lot of other people who don't know what they're talking about either. So
Totally.
I see this all the time. Like, I have this sore in my nipple. Should I? Like, they don't know.
Yeah.
Like, call your doctor, call someone else.
Totally. Totally.
Totally.
But yeah, I definitely would just say have a low threshold for reaching out for support, help, assessment in the beginning because you can save yourself and your baby a lot of unnecessary complications.
I completely agree. I want to transition over to the emotions of breastfeeding because I feel like that there's a lot that surrounds it there. And we did a really great episode with Dr. Sarah Orrick on postpartum mental health and
Mhm.
postpartum depression. And it feels like there's a lot of emotional weight that is carried with breastfeeding of whether you choose to do it or not. And there's a lot of mom guilt there. But how does this then intersect with postpartum depression or the baby blues, which we learned from her that could happen right after? How do you
Mhm.
handle that hormone and trying to figure it all out? What is your usual conversation with moms at that period of time?
So, one of the things that I talk about early is that people need to find their circle. A lot of the postpartum depression, anxiety, any of the postpartum mood disorders, I think can be mitigated when you have like your postpartum team and village set up. Because a lot of times, like, you can't see it in yourself that, like, oh, this isn't quite normal, or these feelings are like a little bit off. But your loved ones can see that. Your best friend can see it. Your doula can see it. And so think in advance about like who your people are so they can kind of be the ones to kind of check on like how are you doing because normally this is what I see and you're saying a lot of this and I'm concerned. And so I think a lot of people nowadays don't have those in real life connections. Just having that in itself, we know can reduce postpartum mood disorders. Just having your village set up in advance. So that's one thing that I would say. But in postpartum, if people are breastfeeding, you know, it can create more depression if they have a hormonal based depression happening. I've had some clients who've had to stop because it's just the hormones associated were too much for them. But I think with the stigma, like I was saying before, it's just like I've been doing this for quite a bit time now. And I can tell you when I started back in say 2000 to now, I see more depression, anxiety, probably double than what I saw 20 plus years ago. And we would think that those numbers would be going down. And I think that they're going up primarily because a lot of people are benchmarking what they see should be happening in their home based on what they're seeing on Instagram or what they're seeing on TikTok. And it's such a wildly different experience than what is actually happening in people's homes. And so I think a lot of people get into these ideas that what they're doing is not good enough because they see Jane had her baby and she's making 100 ounces of milk and she has a 6 pack on week 4, which actually isn't happening for 98% of the people. And so I
Yeah.
think a lot of people, I would be telling them if you're using like online to just like scroll and like to just have a release, great. But if you're using that to kind of benchmark like where you should be on your journey, it's the worst thing. Turn your phone off, do something else. It's something I talk to my clients about a lot because I am seeing that a lot of what we see on there, like what we see it's happening to like teen girls and boys, the same thing is happening to postpartum moms, this benchmark, and it's creating more anxiety, more depression because they think they're not meeting some unrealistic standard that's on social media, you
Yeah.
know, but emotionally speaking, mothering, breastfeeding, your whole couple changing, that in itself creates a lot of emotions that people, I think, a lot of times aren't prepared to deal with. Like I've seen crazy things in
Yeah.
20 years happen in people's homes because maybe there weren't discussions with a partner about what it was going to look like. So the other thing that I would add is have discussions in pregnancy or pre-pregnancy about what the plan is postpartum. Do you have an expectation that your partner is going to be helping doing certain things? Does one partner have an expectation about feedings that the other one doesn't? And so I think that a lot of my clients who are successful are having these conversations in pregnancy or pre-pregnancy when possible, so that both people have realistic expectations of what the other person needs during this time.
Caitlin, it may be on your list, like a partner's role. And just because you touched on it, if you had to give one piece of advice to partners of breastfeeding mothers, they're obviously not the ones doing it, but how would you suggest partners best support in the first couple days, weeks, months?
There's a lot of ways they can support, but specifically if they are supporting a nursing partner, the
Yeah.
number one thing I would say is attend the classes with your partner. If they're doing a prenatal lactation, go with mom to that session. If they have a lactation consultant come in the house, sit there for that hour. Don't think like, oh, I'm gonna let them do their thing and I'll be there because in the beginning, like you have what we call mom brain. Like people are telling you all these things. You're not retaining anything. You don't remember what people said. Like
Totally.
they
Yeah,
leave like, oh, I got it when they were here, but now I don't remember what happened. We
totally.
need dad to be like the historian and the taker of information. What usually happens in, hetero couples, the woman goes out and gets all the information and relays it to the dad.
Yeah.
And when it comes to lactation, what I want to see is that dad, even if he's not jumping in all the time, come in there and kind of support 25% of that. So that when she's like, does his latch look right? You remember, oh, the lactation said, put the baby's head like this. And you know
Right.
how to help assist them. And so that's
Right.
what I would say for a dad or any kind of partner that is supporting a breastfeeding mom. But in general, they need a cheerleader. They need to be told how amazing is what they're doing. They need someone who is sharing like how wonderful it is, like how much they've accomplished, because the default for most new parents is to think that they're not doing it right, it's not going well,
Mm.
and you need someone who is affirming the opposite. What they don't need is someone being like, oh, like if it's so hard to breastfeed, just give the bottle, give the formula. If they're saying they want to nurse, you need to be supportive and help them attempt that versus saying like, it's not working, why are you doing this, don't make it so hard on yourself. We find that it actually makes it harder for moms when they're getting that feedback.
It's funny you
Super
gave
helpful.
that advice about the partner being educated due to mom brain, because that was Jessica Diggs, our actual expert on birth. That was her advice. She said dad or partner needs to be as educated, if not more, because mom has enough going on that she's not going to be like the source of all knowledge.
You need
Compl-
it. Like I have 3 kids, and the last baby was born at the hospitals. We went to the hospital and we had like a contentious situation with some providers there. I've been doing this at this point for 20 years. I didn't have the emotional or cognitive ability while in labor to have any of the conversations that need to be had.
Sure.
So my husband and my doula were integral to advocating for me and like making sure things went smoothly, because I actually couldn't have that
Totally.
conversation, even though I'm like 20 years of maternal child health experience. I couldn't navigate that situation.
Yeah.
And so thinking about if I couldn't do it, like most people wouldn't be able to. And so it was great that my husband had gone to birthing classes, that like
Yeah.
we had a doula there who could like intervene in the situation that ended up turning out fine and I ended up having a beautiful birth. But it could have went sideways if it was expected that I was going to be the one to like navigate this, because I couldn't.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. One of the things you just mentioned that I want to ask about is you said there's a lot of hormones while breastfeeding. And one of our friends said that I'm reading her quote right now, and she said, "Oh, Jesus, where was this episode a year ago? Hormones related to breastfeeding. The rage is so real. Please ask more." And so she said when she was breastfeeding, she had like crazy rage. I know nothing about
Yeah.
this, so I'm very
There's so
curious.
many different things. It's kind of like everyone gets their own special cocktail. And
Okay.
there's no way to determine what your cocktail is going to look like, even baby to baby. And so just because you have this amazing experience with baby one doesn't mean it's going to be the same with baby two, or your sister had something, you're not going to have that same thing. So there isn't like this connection to like, my mom had all these issues, so I'm going to have these with breastfeeding. It's not like that. Our bodies are all kind of individualized. And so some things that can happen from hormones. We have some people who get depressed from the hormones. We have some people get very anxious from the hormones. There's rage that can happen, like either doing breastfeeding sessions or after, because of the dip or the rise in the hormone load that they're getting. Everybody responds differently. Like I have some people who feel like they are on cloud 9, who's gotten the best cocktail of happy hormones, and like they're like, isn't it beautiful today? Isn't my husband amazing? They just have the right cocktail for their body.
Yeah.
And so there's no way to kind of know what it's going to look like, but those are normal things that people can experience in that range: anger, anxiety, depression, loneliness, panic. I've seen the whole gamut. Usually most people will, after say like 6 weeks, 3 to 6 weeks, it will tend to be more even, because they're not having this big dip. Like you kind of stabilize as your body gets into that production mode and you're kind of doing it over time. But for some people it can be ongoing that these hormones affect them in that way. So what I would say, what you can do to kind of mitigate, make sure you're eating well and getting those like fats and protein, eating throughout the day, not going long stretches without having what you need. I know a lot of people think about not having too much sugar, but I always tell people like, don't think sugar, think carb, because your body needs carbs to make milk and your baby needs carbs for their brain. And so this is not the time to be on a no sugar, keto diet, for example. And so that kind of stuff can also, create issues if you are not fueling your body in the ways that are going to be best for your hormones.
Okay, super useful. Lundie, do you have any other questions? Because I do have a lot more to go through, but I want to let you jump in as well.
I have two. Maybe we can like rapid fire, because we got a question saying, can you breastfeed if you've had your nipples pierced? The
You
girls want
can.
to
You will
know.
have to take. You will take out the the piercing when you have the baby. A lot of people recommend taking it out in pregnancy because
Yeah.
some people have the skin could be adhesed to that nipple ring. And so you want some time. It can create some scar tissue sometimes. And so
Okay.
we want to get those taken out to see like what's going to happen. But most people have no issue with doing that once they take them out. But you do have to
Okay.
take them out.
You heard it here
Okay.
first. And then my second question is around the concept of pump and dump. Like like you hear like the girls who start drinking, like or the mothers who start
Yeah.
drinking, they have a young baby. If they have a glass of wine, then there's an idea that you have to pump and dump that because like alcohol maybe can get transferred to the milk.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah.
How long do you have to do that? Do you have to do that? What's the deal?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked this because it's a great example of how we overcomplicate things. And I was gonna cuss, but I changed it. So, like,
You're more
this is
than
the one that
welcome
gets
to.
me.
We do it all the time.
So for one, there'd be no baby alive in France if moms were not having, like, if they were pumping and dumping, and like everyone has wine, like, so it's not in
Totally.
this way. Now, here's what I will say: the pumping and dumping, we don't have a lot of research on that. So it's also very individualized to say, like, when I drink something, when that gets into my bloodstream and goes through my stomach and gets into my breast milk, it's a lot of channels it has to go through to get into the baby's milk.
Mhm.
So it's usually we're talking about very, very low. So the rule of thumb is if you're good enough to drive, you're good enough to breastfeed. Now, if you're going to Vegas and you're doing shots, et cetera, we probably need to have other conversations. But if that's what you're doing, then you probably don't want to feed the baby. But as far as pumping and dumping, if you are again drinking excessively, you definitely can pump and dump and just, so that you're getting that movement of the milk. But if
Mm.
you are talking about having a glass of wine, nowadays, 2026, we are not telling women to pump and dump.
Right.
Again, if you are good enough to drive, you're good enough to breastfeed. If you are drinking more than that, then we obviously would want you not to feed the baby. Or you're going to be feeding them as soon as possible before it gets into your bloodstream and into the milk. So
Yeah.
to give you kind of like the scale of
Timeline?
this,
Mm.
if a mom was doing, let's say, hard drugs, most cases, the doctor would still have them breastfeed if it wasn't methamphetamine.
Wow.
So your glass of Chablis is probably not going to do much to the situation,
Yeah.
because the benefits of them getting that milk in most cases going to be better. Now, obviously, if you're doing
Okay.
like hard drugs, cocaine, methamphetamines, it's a whole different story. But like we have a lot of these conversations now around, marijuana, THC, because a lot of people are doing gummies and all kinds of things. We don't have any
Yeah.
research on this because we can't legally research babies on THC, et cetera.
I
But what their providers would tell them if they're in places where this is legal is that they would want them to feed as quickly as possible. So, for example, for women who smoke, the recommendations that like the American Academy of Pediatrics, et cetera, obviously would say not to smoke. But if they are smoking, to feed the baby as soon after as possible before that nicotine has a chance to get into the breast milk, et cetera. Now, the thing with
Okay.
nicotine and things like that, they do stay. You do end up keeping a level across times. We don't want people to be smoking and breastfeeding.
Mhm.
But again, the benefits outweigh the risks. They would not tell a mom to stop breastfeeding because she's smoking.
Okay.
Okay. Super helpful. Thank you.
So, how do you handle going back to work if you're breastfeeding and you have a 9 to 5?
So I think that that's probably 50% of the moms who are nursing are probably people going back to work.
Yeah.
And nowadays it's much more durable than it was like 25 years ago.
Okay.
So a couple of things. I always tell people they want to be planning this like from the time they have the baby. It's like, you're going back at 16 weeks. When you come home, you're already in that mode of like, I need to be getting things ready. And so one thing that I tell moms to start doing is to start stockpiling milk, i.e., I'm feeding the baby and I'm pumping and I'm putting that extra milk in the freezer, trying to create my stash.
Okay.
What freaks most women out is this idea they're going to be at work and they're going to run out of milk, and babies' needs increase. And you might think like, oh, I have 200 ounces in the freezer, but they eat a lot. And so that will go away like that. And so if you have the stash, not only the peace of mind that it gets you, but you're not like, I got to make enough milk today for tomorrow kind of feel. It's like, you have that like back stock of it. And so from the beginning, start pumping earlier than what I probably would recommend. So usually I don't have moms pump until like say 2 weeks plus. And so if you're going back to work at 12 weeks, I would start having them either pump or using a haka. Have you guys seen with the haka? It's like HAKA.
No.
It's an amazing invention. I wish they had it when I was having babies. But basically, it's literally a silicone little thing that you just suction to your breast while you're breastfeeding. And normally your boob would just leak when you're feeding the baby on one side. Now this little thing is capturing all that milk. I have some moms just from like that leakage will have 2 or 3 ounces at a feeding that they've been able to
Wow.
capture.
That's
Which
great.
is like a full
Okay.
feeding.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I will say in advance to people, pumping is kind of a chore. It's kind of annoying. It doesn't hurt, but it's kind of annoying. And so this Haka has been life changing. You don't have to hook it up to anything. You just sit there and it's like simultaneously you're getting milk while you're feeding your baby. And so I'll have them using something like a Haka or pumping to start putting that stash away in the beginning so they have enough. So they're not kind of like, going against a clock. They also, if they can, try to do a ramp up and going back to work, meaning let's say you work 40 hours a week. Can you negotiate like that first 2 weeks that you're doing part time or you're doing 3 days
Yeah.
or you're doing shorter days so that you have enough time? Because when you're with your baby all day, a lot of times just that separation can create a milk decrease. And that's
Yeah.
what freaks people out. Like going back to work and now my milk decreased by like 30%, like I'm not pumping as much. And so people freak out and
Yeah.
it's really normal. And so to kind of prevent that, you can have that easing into the office. It can help with that. Obviously, making sure that you are working with a daycare or a nanny or someone who's like very friendly to the idea they're going to be heating up your milk, that they're okay with you stashing it. I have some clients who literally on their lunch break would like go home, to like a work at home dad and like feed the baby. So there's so many
Yeah.
ways to do this.
Okay.
And now at most companies, they do have nursing rooms. If you have your own office, you can do it there. You have like now these pumps that like you can't see them. They don't make that much noise. There's so many ways to do it discreetly that we didn't have before. And so it's a lot easier for working moms now.
Okay, that is super useful. And then someone asked about combo feeding. So they said, what is the benefit of breastfeeding beyond 6 months when you start weaning onto food?
So after 6 months, when they start having food, it's necessary because after 6 months, if you're breastfeeding, your baby won't be getting enough iron. So that's what they do need to have an actual food source to get iron because they won't get enough from you after 6 months. So it is important. So I always tell people like you can't just only breastfeed for the first year. You actually do need to introduce some food starting around 6 months. And so the benefits are many, the immune system, it's the gut system. There's also just like emotional attachment things that are related to being able to breastfeed your child that are important in that first year. Nutritionally, like if you're thinking that you're still going to be giving them dairy, obviously getting dairy from a human source is going to be better on their gut and their digestion than getting it from an alternative source. And so those are the benefits. But it's really up to parents. I always say the time that you breastfeed is as long as you and the baby still want to. There isn't like a time. So the average amount of breastfeeding around the world is actually 4.5 years, which is hard for people to believe.
Wow.
4.5 years.
That is
Yes,
hard
that
to
means some people are breastfeeding till 7. So depending on what country they live in, like obviously,
Go
if you're in a
judgment.
place where we have grocery stores and we have yogurt and all these things, we have a very easy way to get dairy and nutrients to our children. So most of us aren't doing it to that late stage. And so it's really going to depend on what the needs are of that couple and that family to decide how long they want to do it. But there's lots of benefits to doing it after 6 months, but it's okay if you want to stop at 6 months or before as well.
Fair.
Very useful. I have our last question, which we always ask, but before I do that, Lundie, do you have any?
Sorry, I know I said I used all my questions, but I do have one more because this last one just reminded me. Baby-led weaning. What is baby-led weaning? That like, what does it mean to do baby-led
So
weaning?
when people say baby-led weaning, they're actually usually talking about solid food and not breastfeeding, which sounds weird. So
Got it.
baby-led weaning, when people are talking about it, is usually this idea that like you don't make baby food, you kind of just give them pieces, and when they want to like feed themselves and add food, like that's how they start to wean themselves from breast milk to solid
Okay.
food. Versus like, I'm gonna decide at 5 months, we're starting solid foods, I'm making you these purees and I'm feeding them to you. Baby-led
it.
weaning would be them kind of deciding like, I don't want breast milk as much or bottle, and I'm gonna start to feed myself solid food.
Okay. Helpful.
So it sounds like there's really no, because one of the questions I did have was, how do you know when to stop? But it sounds like you just feel it out.
You stop when you want to. Like there's times you're just like, as a mom, you can feel overtouched. Like I just don't even want to touch me. Like it's all day. Like you may just be
Right.
overtouched. Like I just can't do this anymore. Or you feel like I need to have space away. Oh, one thing that I didn't mention,
Yeah.
the question that you asked, which is really important, was this idea of combo feeding
Oh, yeah.
and being able to bottle and breastfeed. Now, I always tell
Mhm.
people, if you know you're going back to work or you want to be able to go to lunch with your girlfriends, or go to the spa, you need to be able to be away from your house more than 2 hours at a time. And
Yeah.
so if you know that's going to be you, like you want your baby to be able to take a bottle, you want to start introducing a bottle by 4 weeks postpartum. And what can happen when you wait too long, and we get these calls a lot, like, I'm going back to work, my baby refuses to take a bottle. If they just been like with mom and cozy for 3 or 4 months and never having a bottle nipple, like they're gonna be like, I don't want that. Like I want mom. And so
Right.
you want to introduce that early. And it can't just be like, oh, I did one at 4 weeks and I haven't done another one at 3 months, you want to be doing at least one a day of a bottle feed. So they're used to taking that bottle so they don't refuse it
That is,
later if
And
you know
hopefully
you want to be able to like be away.
and hopefully dad can help with that too, or your partner.
Yeah, so usually, like when I started doing them, my husband, his job was to do the 10 p.m. feeding, like a dream feed. And that'd be another episode for you guys, like on pediatric sleep specialty. But a lot of times we do a dream feed because it helps your baby to like go longer stretches at night with sleep. And so that was my husband's job. So that if I could go to bed early and then I would have this long stretch into the next feeding, and dad would do a bottle of my pump milk. And like that was his special time. And he says like that was one of his most favorite parts of having
cute.
children, is like having that little time with them, like quiet, doing the bottle, like a thing that he was in charge of. And like to this day, he loves it.
Oh, I love that. And such a good rule of thumb. By 4 weeks, who knows that by
Yeah.
4 weeks, you
Yeah.
should, if you want to introduce bottle, that's when you need
At
to
least
do
once a
it.
day.
Well,
Amazing.
that also is so funny because when my friends asked about combo feeding, I just learned something. I thought combo feeding was food and breast milk at the same time, but it's bottle and breastfeeding at the same time.
And also, for some people, when they say that, they also mean combo of breast milk and formula.
Oh,
And so
okay.
either or. So like for example, like say you're a mom and you're like, when I go back to work, I'm not going to breastfeed anymore, or my child's going to have formula.
Mhm.
Then at some point you want to introduce that before you go back to work, because you don't want to go back to work and your baby's like, I'm not drinking that. Like, what is that? And so you might give a bottle of formula, starting at, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that. If
Okay.
you are planning on making that transition, you don't want it to be cold turkey.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, your milk has been made specifically for your baby. And so if you are willing to and you want to give them your milk, great. But I'll never tell people that one would be better than the others. There's obviously a lot of alternatives, and you can introduce that at any time that you feel comfortable doing that.
Okay. Amazing.
that.
That is so helpful. My last question is something we ask every single one of our experts, which is what is one thing that you would want to tell all women about said topic? So this one is, what is one thing that all women should know about breastfeeding?
One thing that I wish that all women knew about breastfeeding is most people can do it well. I think there's so much fear about it not working out. And my friend said she couldn't. And usually it's happening because people don't have the education, the access, and the support. And so I wish most women knew that if they got the right support and the right information, they could probably do it very well.
Yeah.
Love it.
Amazing.
Listen to this episode, send this episode to your friends, send this episode to your partners, send this
Yeah.
episode to your friends' partners, because we've been educated.
Send it to the grandmas and grandpas too.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, everyone
Yes.
needs to know. So we don't
And
have the iteration of the wrong information transcending
Yeah.
generations. That's amazing.
Totally.
Thank you so much, Brandi. This was amazing.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Welcome to the debrief, where we discuss things we needed a little more clarity on.
Yay!
We're back. We're back. So breastfeeding. Brandi was incredible. I
Yeah.
want to work with her. Imagine having her like
I
on your
know.
team.
I know. I feel this so heavily with so many of the experts. I'm like, I would love to work with them, but there's so many US focused experts, or they're based in the US or they're based somewhere else. So
Yes.
she did say telehealth, but still.
Oh, well, also to her main point was to ask for help. Like I mean, not to jump right into some of my takeaways, but
Mhm.
like one of her main points was ask for help sooner than you think you're allowed to. Like in the early days, just speak to a lactation consultant or expert
Totally.
about the problem, because it doesn't, like she said, come naturally to, it sounds like, literally
No.
anyone. And so, I mean, one of my bigger takeaways is just like find one either at the hospital that you deliver at or online
Yeah.
or in your network, and just speak to someone. I don't think I know anyone who has ever worked with a lactation consultant. Like it
Totally.
seems like
Well,
kind of bougie or like extra, and it's a privilege. I mean, it's a paid
it
service,
is.
but yeah.
I asked this to my girlfriends in Quebec who had a baby in the last year, and they were like, at the hospital, there's lactation consultants, so you can
Yeah.
request a
Yeah.
lactation consultant. So that was one of mine too, was I guess speaking to a lactation consultant ahead of time, but then when you're at the hospital to advocate for yourself, which is what we keep hearing from everyone about, this level of advocacy for yourself, which is great.
100%.
But you can ask in
Yeah.
advance, being like, I want them to hopefully be ready for me when my baby comes out. I guess
Yeah,
I guess my takeaway from all this was just, you don't have to be a hero. And
100%.
you don't have to be a hero. You can ask for help. You can take antibiotics if you need antibiotics. It's going to be fine. Like it's
You can
don't be a
have a
hero.
glass of wine and not need to pump and dump if that's what needs to happen 3 weeks after you give birth or whatever, exactly.
Totally.
Exactly. And help is available and to seek it out. And
Totally.
earlier than expected, she said I wrote down one of her like kind of key markers was around 37 weeks. You can start talking to a consultant and just about what to expect. And she specifically said actually at the hospital, and I put this down as well, and we keep hearing this
Mhm.
to your point, golden hour, as they say, like the first hour or 2 hours after you give birth,
Yes.
that it is your partner's job to also advocate for you so that you're not the one needing to also do that moments
Mhm.
after you give birth, to tell whoever's working with you to not do any of the tests that aren't absolutely essential and to leave you
Yeah.
alone with your baby and
Yeah.
have that skin to skin hour. And the crazy thing that she said about breastfeeding is that it's expected that the baby inches naturally its way like towards your boob, like starts
Yeah.
to seek out the milk. How crazy is that? It's really we're
Mother
just animals
Nature.
at the end of the day.
We're just
You
nature.
know,
Or we're just
it's pretty
yeah,
crazy.
we're just nature. We're just animals. You're right.
We're
Not
just
yeah.
nature. Science is crazy. we're
All the
we're
memes.
just
My other one was that, and I could totally see myself being stressed about this, that my baby's not getting enough milk when she was saying that it's literally like a dribble at the beginning, a thimble, and your baby is so small, which makes sense. Their belly and sweet little stomachs are so tiny, they can only take so much milk. I know, just
Bit
a
of
little bit.
marble.
A
Bit of marble
marble.
size.
I know. So it's okay if you're not producing a ton of milk, and that it
Mhm.
can take like an hour plus for them to consume a thimble's worth of milk. Like it's just
I
like
know.
then to look for the ears moving to make sure you see that they're drinking.
Totally, like the indicators, the physical indicators that they're actually drinking. But I think also for like the first week or two when they're just like getting that jelly stuff out of their stomach and like starting
Yes,
to digest properly, that the actual act of the baby nursing isn't necessarily to actually consume milk. It's to start the physical indicator to your body that it's time to produce milk. So it's like they're telling you and you are telling them, and we are
totally.
all nature.
We are all nature. We are one.
We are one. But I have to say, I want to shout out. I actually haven't told you this, but I was at
Yeah,
Weeks of Rye and was there, and they just had their little baby Leo, and they're just the coolest parents. Leo is like 2 months old, and they were just out and about on the town, which we
love
love.
it.
I hope she wouldn't mind me sharing. I don't think she would. It is or was really, really struggling with breastfeeding. And so I told her we were recording this, and she
Hmm.
was like, I really needed that. It was incredibly hard for me. The mom guilt is like nothing you've ever felt before. I was so disappointed with myself, like all the things. And Lizy was also there, our other mom friend. And like, I think so much of this is just like, if you know, you know. And I'm sure we will come back to this eventually when we're mothers
Totally.
and be like, we just didn't have a fucking clue. So I just want to also preface to say, like, everyone's experience is different and we don't know. And shout out to moms, period. I mean, Brandy said if you
Seriously.
eat for 1 hour, you've done well for your child. Or
Yeah.
even if you can't, you know what I mean? Fed is best. And I just wanted to put that out for because it just sounds like it's really hard. But
So hard.
the follow on of that is if it's really that hard, ask for help, I think
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
Ask for help.
true. It's takeaway. I think that's just the motto for life. Just ask for help.
Ask for
Don't have
help.
to go it alone. Don't
Yeah, talk to some actual talk to your girlfriends and then talk to some
yeah,
actual experts. And then listen to this
exactly.
pod and share it with your mom friend and your not mom friends.
My last takeaway note was that I learned about that leaky cup thing where you attach it to your other boob when you're breastfeeding so that you don't lose any milk. And Brandy was saying like it's so great to have that so that if you're breastfeeding on one, you're probably going to leak a little on the other, and just catching a little bit is worth catching.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up because that was something that I brought up where I was like, "Have you heard of this thing? It's called the Hoka." And they were like, "Yes, we've heard of it and it doesn't work for us." And I was like, "Oh,
Oh,
well, shows you what I know." You know what I mean? And Lisa was like, "I tried it for a friend of mine. She was like gushing milk, like could literally capture an entire bottle's worth of milk, and she said it didn't work for her." So, you know, not one
yeah.
size fits all, but
The other thing I actually want to flag too is Brandy did say that the best formula comes from Europe, and I'm very aware that not everyone can order formula from Europe.
100%. She did say that the equivalent, the local equivalent to European ingredients, I think was called Bobby. So maybe look out for it. But you know what? Fed is best. And so if your baby
Exactly.
is fed and happy, then you're doing great,
Yeah,
mama. Yeah.
totally.
All right.
Yes.
Thanks for
Okay.
listening.
We
All
love you
right.
guys. Bye.